A month or so ago, we made public all of our reference architecture documentation that was previously reserved for customers. That's at docs.cloudposse.com. As part of this, one of the nice things that you have access to if you check this out are design decisions. So basically, within each one of these layers, there's a number of design decisions that are good things to be aware of when you go about implementing your architecture. Another design decision that we updating our recommendations on how to handle self-hosted GitHub Action Runners. And I would say there's even additional developments after this write-up as we continue to learn. But one of the beautiful things when you're using GitHub Actions, unlike some of the commercial alternatives like Circle CI, GitHub doesn't charge you if you self-host your runners. There's no platform fee for that. You just pay whatever your cost is for administering those runners. There's a few ways to go about it. One of the earliest ways was just simply, hey, spin up an auto scale group with some GitHub runners on there and you're good. Except for it's pretty slow scaling, it's quite primitive. You can't have it's very complicated to have different pools of runners, and it's overly simplified. So many might recognize that GitHub themselves acquired a project formerly called the Summer Winds Actions Runner Controller, became the Actions Runner Controller, and then now there's, I forget the new name, there's even a third or fourth iteration of it here, which we've been predominantly using. One of the challenges that we've found running GitHub Actions on EKS, though, is you have two problems or three problems. You got to properly configure your scaling groups for your action runners. You have to properly configure runner to scale to have the capacity. And you need to properly manage your network so you have enough IPs for your Kubernetes cluster to scale. And it's a hungry beast when it comes to IPs. And trying to get the calculus right on all of that is is an exercise in Kubernetes scaling. For the faint of heart, I don't recommend it.
And don't also forget that you need to make sure that you're very careful about the permissions on the various nodes where these actions run so that they don't get access to other parts of your network you don't intend them to because they're running on privileged runners.
Yeah, so one of the really important things if you're using, if your company develops open source, you never use self-hosted runners for open source. Or if you do, you put those in their own cluster, in their own account that is disconnected from every other part of your network, because that's a prime way to traverse your entire network if your runner architecture allows for that. So keep that in mind, and they're not mutually exclusive. You can use the free GitHub runners for your open source projects, and like GitHub manage the security there, and use the self-hosted runners for your private repos, which GitHub does charge for. The third option here is more or less similar to the second option. This is using the new runner, which supports these runner scale sets. But if you are familiar with using Actions Runner Controller, it is a big conversion effort to move from option 2 to option 3. And they threw some big limitations at you. One of the biggest ones is you can only have one label on your jobs. So you can only target exactly one worker group. If you want to try and come up with the perfect runner group for your workloads, you have to start defining just a ton of specialized runner pools, and it doesn't work well. There's feature requests for this, and they're talking about it in the community, how to solve it. But we're talking I think it's been at least 6 months or longer, and there's no movement, and it's been frustrating us. Plus, a lot of the bug fixes are going into the new version, but the old version is the only one we find that really works well. So option 4, Philips Lab has a popular Terraform module. We support that one as well. Uses Lambdas to build, spin up your runners. Overall, no complaints about it. It's a good option. We predominantly recommend this if you're not using EKS, since if you're using EKS predominantly, presumably you want everything on EKS. And that leads me to option 5. And this is because of all the drama above, and I could go on talking for an hour just about this, but I will spare you right now unless somebody has some specific questions. We are now starting to evaluate runs on, which was recommended to us. And our initial findings are it's pretty awesome. Very low lift to get deployed. It is commercial, but at €300 a year, it's incredibly cheap. Still self-hosted, still CloudFormation templates, still in your infrastructure. You just pay for a license fee basically to get access to do that. And it's really fast and very well implemented, well documented as well.